The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Veronica Posada with Physician Partners. Thank you for participating in this afternoon's webinar regarding self-pay patient payments presented to you by Athena Health. I'd like to inform you that Ed Sherlock with Athena Health is our presenter today. And a brief background on Ed is he has a BA in economics as well as an MBA, both from University of Massachusetts. He's been with Athena Health for about 4 years, works specifically in the small group segment 1 to 6 within the 1 to 6 physician group. He helps practices navigate change and maintain independence. Prior to joining Athena, he worked directly with acute care facilities, mainly in and around Boston. I'd like to also inform everyone that you are muted. If you have any questions, to please type the questions in on the side panel. We'd be happy to answer those questions as soon as the presentation is completed, and Ed will be available to answer your questions. I'd like to, before handing over the presentation to Ed, present you with 3 poll questions that we have. And if you would please just take a few seconds to read the question and answer those, and I'll share the responses with you at the end of the presentation. And if Ed has anything to add to the responses, I'm sure he will do that at that time as well. So I'm going to launch the first question here, and that is, are you currently benefiting from your self-pay collection strategy? If you can please take a few moments to answer that, yes or no. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that. Our second question is, what is a good way to roll out a self-pay plan to your staff? Okay, we'll go ahead and close this poll question. Last question. Do many patients sign up for the bill on EOB? If you can please answer that question. A few more seconds there. Okay, we'll go ahead and close. And I'd like to hand it over to Ed.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And first of all, I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for setting aside a little bit of time to take a listen in on this webinar and hopefully engage in a little bit of dialogue at the end that folks will find at least useful, if not directly beneficial and impactful going forward for their each respective individual situations. So success strategies for self-pay. All right, and this is an issue that over the last, I want to say, 10 or 15 years, really depending on your tenure in this marketplace, has become a growing thorn in everyone's collective side. A little bit about me. So I got a nice introduction, which was great, but a little bit more that I would like to share with you that really ties me into this story on a personal level. When I was a young person, I had severe allergies and asthma and a lot of the same kinds of stuff you commonly see in kids. And but this was in the 80s, and at that time, as long as we had some sort of insurance, dealing with getting good patient care or good health care really had a price tag of a $5 copay for an office visit and maybe a $5 copay for a branded agent to get medication. And I think a lot of us have seen some changes over the last 15, 20 years or so where that equation has significantly shifted, and it's had impacts not only on patients but also on practices. As we look at strategies for patient self-pay, what we understand is that on a business level, this will directly impact you from a margin perspective. So these are actual real margin dollars that could mean the difference between keeping the lights on and the doors open for your practice. So our objectives for today really will be around evaluating what you're doing right now within the office, and then also looking at how practice management can support your strategy. So what health information technology and services are available that might help you to really address this evolving challenge of chasing down these dollars. And before I get into really the substance of the subject for today, I'd like to kind of quickly take a step back. I often show this painting throughout the course of a lot of my presentations and demonstrations. It's a painting that many of you may be familiar with. It's a painting called The Doctor. It's from the 19th century, a gentleman by the name of Sir Luke Fields. And what it effectively portrays is a physician completely captured in the moment of patient care, not weighed down by ICD-10, meaningful use, PQRS, the alphabet soup of all the things that are being put on your plate as healthcare providers, practice managers, administrators, nurses, and other folks that really just got into this business to help your community get and stay well.
For a moment, I apologize for interrupting. The screen disappeared, and I've also received another another concern that he can't see the screen.
Okay. All right. I have the let's see. I have the presentation still up here, and I believe I'm still in the webinar.
Edward, this is Destin. You'll have to hit show screen again. You may have deselected that.
I have not.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take back this.
Sure.
Yeah, it appears that you've fallen off as a presenter, so we'll come back to our side.
Hang on, I'll relog in here. Is the audio obviously still okay for everybody? So it's just a visual piece?
Yes.
All right, bear with me for 1 second. I'll see if I can.
All right. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. You just got kicked out for some reason. So logging back in. As soon as you log back in, we'll go ahead and give you back the controls.
Sure. I just found the email, and I believe I've logged back in.
See you there? Coming your way right now.
Okay. Thank you.
You got it. There you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you should be able to do show screen again. There you are.
Are you able to see the PowerPoint on your side?
Yeah, if you just go ahead and play the slideshow from there, you should be good. From current slide.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, getting back to the point that I was making, essentially focusing on patient care rather than dealing with patient self-pay. Let me see, I've got a little bit of feedback now.
Yeah, if you just mute the computer again, I think you'll be okay, or the phone, either one of the two.
Let's see here. All right. The audio seems to be better now. Okay. So getting back to the discussion here.
Yeah, I still think you have some feedback coming through on there. It's one of the other, I think it reactivated your mic when you log back in.
Yeah. All right, let me see here.
Sorry, everyone, for the technical difficulties with webinars today.
Yes.
Get this right back up.
I apologize there.
All right.
All right. How's that now?
That's good. I think you're showing your camera as well. If that's a concern, I'm just letting you know.
Audio straight, no camera, everything all set on your
Yeah,
side?
please go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So again, I'm going to take full ownership there of the technical difficulties. So I do apologize for everyone. I will make sure I respect everyone's time because I know it's valuable. But the point that I was trying to make here really is just there's a lot being put on plates of medical practices to really navigate and deal with that have very little to do with good patient care and good patient outcomes. And that's really where we hope as an organization to step in. So just looking at the overall landscape, the challenge is real. Okay, in terms of patient deductibles over the last couple of years, I mean, obviously this is data that is a little bit dated at this point, but we've seen a dramatic increase in patient deductibles. And what that means for you in your practice is how do you track down those dollars? And really having a strategy in place is going to make the difference for the practice going forward, not just hoping for the best. And really, deductibles are significant regardless of the specialty. So as you can see here, really across the board, this money is being put on the shoulders of patients and then in turn on the shoulders of those in the practice to go track down and collect. We know how difficult it is to deal with the insurance companies. We also know, too, that now that it's being put on the shoulders of patients, it's possibly even more challenging to collect from the practice's perspective. This data point actually speaks directly to that issue. So 50% of overall patient responsibility goes uncollected. That's really a shocking number, and it's not sustainable. This here is a study that looks at consumers' tendencies in terms of which bills they're least likely to pay if faced with a difficult choice. For families, as we all know, what they'll probably do first and foremost is take care of those bills that will keep the lights on, keep the roof over their head, and keep the heat on in cold months like the wintertime I'm experiencing here in Boston. And they're not going to deal so much with that outstanding patient balance once that claim is adjudicated. And that has a real impact for the practice, too, in terms of DAR. So not just chasing it down, but actually the time that you spend and the energy and resources you commit to chasing down those patient self-pay dollars is really significant. And the longer, as we all know, that money stays out there and goes uncollected, the more likely it is to be written off. In terms of really understanding, I'm sorry, go ahead. Was there a question?
No, not yet.
Okay. And really putting a strategy in place is really going to be driven by how well we understand the consumer. So based on this information given to us from a 2011 survey of patients, their tendencies will really drive how well you do in terms of collecting these self-pay dollars. Most of the time, patients, I don't know about this data point, but in the experience that I've had, a lot of times a patient will come to an office. They won't necessarily know what their deductible is. They won't necessarily know what their responsibility once treatment and care is administered. They're also interested in making payments through what you might call non-traditional avenues for a medical platform, so interested in making payments online. And also 63% would use a payment plan if it was made available. So these are all critical bits of information as we look to formulate a strategy around patient self-pay. How can we incorporate what we know about the patient to make our ability to collect the dollars that quite honestly, we have a right to as a healthcare practice, make that process obviously more successful. So what we're going to look at here are three pieces: creating a self-pay policy, using technology to build efficiencies and automation in your self-pay efforts, and making self-pay collection part of your practice workflow. Patient self-pay responsibility is a reality. There have been practices that I've worked with in the past where, Medicare is the #1 payer, Blue Cross is the #2, and patient self-pay is the #3. It's a significant chunk of practice revenue, and to simply ignore it and put a plan and not put a plan in place is detrimental to the ongoing viability of the practice. So first and foremost, create a self-pay policy. Make it explicit. Verbalize it. So the essential parts of putting a policy in place, and let me just make, my mic is there's still some feedback here, unfortunately, so please bear with me. But putting parts of an essential policy in place really start with calling it out directly, telling the patient, what is this form for? And you can incorporate this not only in the office, but through other avenues like the web portal. And make sure that patients are aware of your policies and their responsibility to make good on what they owe you. Section 1, describe what the policy covers. And then describe generally that you hold patients responsible for the fees that they properly owe. Again, calling out directly in very plain language what the expectations are. Tell the patient about the fact that you expect payment for whatever they owe, given the plan that they've bought into. And then just clearly describe any payment charges or discount plan that you might offer. Like, what plans can you put in place to make the self-pay element more manageable for patients? And then what are the consequences? Describing in detail what might happen if they fail to pay on what they're responsible for. Referral to a collection agency or an attorney. Obviously, it's a fine balance as a medical practice because, again, going back 20 years, when I was a young person, this was a discussion that was never had because, the dollars were much less. But in today's marketplace, it could be hundreds and thousands of dollars or thousands of dollars that a patient will be responsible for over the course of any calendar year. And if you're not putting a plan in place to make sure that your practice is able to collect that money, you're putting yourself in a difficult situation. And then finally, patient acknowledgement, making sure that the patient has seen, read, and understands what their responsibilities are and really what the policy outlines. So section number 2, using technology to build efficiencies and automation in your self-pay efforts. So again, getting back to this idea of comparative advantage, so folks that are in a medical practice, they have a variety of proficiencies. Obviously, the provider, their job is to make sure that patients get and stay well, and then folks within the office really run the practice in an efficient fashion. If there's any sort of efficiencies or technologies that you can leverage to making capturing patient self-pay much more efficient, it's definitely worthwhile to investigate. So what are key pieces or key bits that you can incorporate to help your practice pull in that money? Reminder calls, making sure that patients are aware of not only when their appointments are happening, but also if they have an outstanding balance, leveraging tools to let patients know, hey, you have an outstanding balance following your most recent visit. How would you like to settle that? Live operators that can support the practice, that have information around what that outstanding balance looks like, and also possibly set up different payment plan options. Payment estimator. So again, the healthcare marketplace is extremely unique. You have patients or customers that come to your office. They're looking for care or treatment. They don't necessarily know exactly, what it costs for that. All they know is what the outcome that they're looking for is. And you, as a healthcare provider, again, it's a bit of an opaque transaction. Understanding what the coverage is for this patient and their out-of-pocket expenses going forward is a significant challenge. And part of what your health information technology vendor should be able to support you in doing is providing better information around planning for, what the patient's self-pay will look like after the visit. Text message reminders, another tool to let patients know, hey, you have an outstanding balance. A patient portal, an avenue or a place for patients to go to interact with the practice outside of normal business hours and not obviously sapping time and energy from the practice in terms of HR, and providing a way for them to not only understand what they owe, but where that balance is coming from. Credit card processing. So a way to leverage this tool, not only allowing patients to make credit card payments, but also set up payment plans that are automated. Once they're set up, they automatically pull from the patient's credit card on the date that's agreed or the amount that's agreed until the balance is satisfied without the staff having to continuously manage that balance. Or actually having a card on file for up to a year for patients to agree to pay any outstanding balance once the claim is adjudicated, as this actually calls out. Once the claim is adjudicated, the outstanding balance is automatically satisfied by a patient credit card on file. So what can an health information technology vendor do to really address some of the challenges around self-pay? So looking at the patient workflow, understanding first and foremost an avenue for patient to interact with the practice. What's the policy around payments? Is there a way to understand before that visit what the policy looks like and potentially if there's any outstanding balance prior to their next visit? Checking on eligibility, making sure that you know before you see the patient, one of the most critical pieces for you getting paid for that service is understanding whether or not that patient is covered. Upon check-in, providing good information at the point of check-in around insurance card information, enabling processing of payments through credit cards, health savings accounts, flex spending accounts, and checks. And then obviously enable secure storage of credit card information to allow for, really processing payments in the future once those claims come back adjudicated. And then on the back end, making sure that your staff is coached around this financial challenge of patient self-pay. Understand really how to frame that discussion because, again, this is a delicate situation. Patients are there because obviously they're looking for good health care, but at the end of the day, it's still a business, and these are important conversations for you and your staff to have. Also, your health information technology vendor should provide access to information around real-time adjudication, other things that were called out around the check-in, around credit card processing, health savings, flex spending, etc. A lot of the same tools that I already called out upon check-in. And then after the claims go through the process of adjudication, patients understanding what they owe and then providing them a variety of ways to make good on those outstanding balances. A lot of these things, a good health information technology vendor and the services that should be incorporated into that should really work to make sure that work comes off your plate and those dollars continue to come in your front door regardless of where they come from, the insurer or the patient. Finally, making self-pay collection part of your practice workflow. So again, it's part of the culture. As things have evolved over time, having these difficult conversations, it really becomes a critical element of making sure the practice stays successful. So training your staff, again, this idea of providing scripts and then maybe even championing folks within the practice that really have that good connection with the patients and understanding around the critical element of making sure that this is not just a line item that gets written off over time or is ignored. And then incorporating specific policies to measure and encourage payment. So time of service payment discounts, cash discounts, extra charge if the bill is not paid. So again, this is on a practice-by-practice basis. And one of the pieces that a good health information technology vendor should be able to take on is really automating all of these policies. Once these are set up initially, they should engage and actually work without the staff members having to keep track of it and then surrounding their workstation with sticky notes and reminders. So again, going through the patient workflow, creating materials to clearly communicate policies, understand the issues around deductibles and copays. This is obviously on a practice-by-practice basis. During the exam, remind patients to have that conversation before they check out. And then also having a set policy in place around, those conversations, and then, prompting patients to look at different options that might be available to them, like setting up payment plans or keeping a credit card on file. And then finally, following up on those plans that are created upon checkout. So again, the overarching element here is getting the practice good information to really work with, instilling a culture of making sure that everyone understands that this is a critical piece to the revenue for the practice, and then leveraging different services and technology to really streamline and automate the entire process from check-in all the way through follow-up. And then finally, when everything else fails, employing a collection agency. And really, as you go through the selection process of an agency to employ, it's critical that, courteous and effective. Those are the two key words. And, usually the time frame is over 120 days. A good system, you should be able to push that, those accounts that are past due that long directly to an organization that you partner with, and then obviously trust that they'll do their very best to collect that money in a courteous fashion. Again, this is another area where a lot of practices just do not employ a service. So this is worth further investigation if this is not part of your self-pay plan. So at Athena Health, we offer 5 services which really combine help to caregivers, really to help them thrive in a dynamic marketplace. So I'm not going to go too much into really the specifics around our services, but the bottom line here is that we are a cloud-based service that really looks to address helping practices pull in money regardless of where that money is coming from, whether it be from private payers or from patients, and really putting in tools in place and helping you develop policies and training to ensure that that every single dollar that you have coming to you is not left on the table and you see it come in the front door. I know that we're pretty much time constrained here, so I've been summarizing. In summary, obviously all of these things that I called out here are elements of our service offering. 93 million in self-pay reminder notifications sent out in 2013. Nearly 35 million collected in our patient portal in that same year. And for practices that leverage our services, these are average data points, regardless of specialty, for their first year on our system. A dramatic increase in collections, as well as a decrease in the no-show rate. So hopefully everyone, barring all of the technological challenges, I hope people have found this information to be useful. And I absolutely would welcome any sort of questions that folks might have, assuming, of course, that we're able to connect on audio once folks are freed up off of mute.
Actually, the way we set up the webinar, thank you anyway, by the way, Ed, I apologize for your presentation, and I apologize to the attendees for the little bit of technical difficulty there. But if you have any questions at this time, please type them in the side panel. We'd be happy to get those questions answered for you. In the meantime, let's see here. I do have some questions here. Let me see. Okay. In the meantime, those questions were actually just from earlier. Let me share the poll results with everybody and the answers. So let me change to show my screen. And let's see, manage. Did I take the controls from you, Ed?
Yeah, I can see the results of the poll here for the first question.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and read those off, please?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So the first question looks like, are you currently benefiting from your self-pay collection strategy? Pretty much a straightforward answer, yes or no. It seems as though a lot of folks are, at least more than half anyway, are feeling like they've engaged in a strategy and it's benefiting the practice. Obviously, across strategies without without a specific benchmark, it's hard to really measure what each individual practice is, calling successful or beneficial. But still, it seems like this is an issue that folks have really come to understand is critical for each individual practice going forward. So that's encouraging.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, let's go to the second one. And if you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah, sure. So what it reads here is, what is a good way to roll out a self-pay plan to your staff? And, I guess the two options were to outsource it or to train staff after hours, assign staff to collect self-pay dollars. So in this element here, it looks like the majority of folks voted to outsource. And again, majority is 55% to 45% being outsourced. So, again, the way we view this is more of like a co-sourcing approach, this idea of comparative advantage. Any tools and efficiencies we can offer to really help practices capture that, we want to make sure that we're able to make those things available and employed within the practice. But again, we want to make sure the practice continues to own that relationship. So, when you look to outsource or offload this work to another vendor, it's critical, I think, for practices to put in policies and tools, if you will, that they're comfortable with. So, for example, not every practice will be really interested in shooting patients a text saying, hey, you owe us, $130. Again, that should be on a practice-by-practice basis.
Okay, great. We did have a couple questions that came in. Let's just share the last poll question there, if you don't mind, Ed, if you can just read that one off too.
Many patients sign up for the bill on EOB, and it looks like the vast majority is no. And obviously, again, here I don't know what each individual practice's experience has been. At least what we've found is that, again, that's on a patient-by-patient discussion. It makes that kind of time to payment much shorter, though, if you can secure a form of payment and automatically charge that patient once the EOB is received. So, again, that's on a practice-by-practice and patient-by-patient basis.
Okay, great. So it looks like we have some questions, and I'll read those off. And the first question is, we have Athena in our solo cardiology practice and highly recommend it. We employ most of the suggestions made today except the texting patients their outstanding balance. How do you handle,
sounds like a plan.
How do you handle emergency self-pay patients when bound by a call contract? For example, take care of the patient, worry about costs later, or mention costs up front.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, this is really coming down to really where we try to provide a set of tools and services that allow you to really streamline the whole, payment process around taking in self-pay dollars. But, again, it's the relationship that you have with your patients, your population, that's most critical. So, I shy away from making those types of recommendations because that's really driven by the relationship. Especially if you're an Athena client, I would probably punt that question to your account manager and maybe look a little bit deeper to see how often that happens in the practice and figure out a strategy for that. Because that is, again, something that you would have available to you as a client, as an account manager that really understands your practice on an individual basis.
Okay, we have another question here. I don't understand the graph that shows days in AR and percent written off. Can you please review that again?
Yeah, so just kind of going off the top of my head, actually let me see right here. Without having to go back into the presentation. So basically the graph that I think what we're talking about right here looks at the average days in accounts receivable for different payment forms, so insurance claims in terms of co-payments, that was a little more than 40 days, deductible right around 20 days, and then looking at different levels of coinsurance. And really what this graph was portraying was that the type of payment, whether it be deductible, coinsurance, or co-payment, all of which have a patient self-pay element to it, the longer it is outstanding, the higher percentage is actually written off. So that was what with the, close to 25% of coinsurance is written off because, that actually exceeds over 80 days in accounts receivable. So what that graph looked at was breaking down different elements of patient self-pay and looking at the likelihood of it being written off after a certain amount of days in accounts receivable. Hopefully that helped somewhat. I mean, I think the information, again, was given to us by medical legal, and really the way we speak to that is, more than anything else, it's really put in to demonstrate the fact that, these are dollars that are difficult to chase down, and just like anything else, the longer they're in DAR, the more likely they are to not be collected at all. And really putting a strategy in place to make sure it doesn't stay out there as long as it does is really the critical element to capturing those dollars.
Okay, here we have another question. How do you find a collection agency? I have tried 3, but they rarely recover anything.
So again, kind of a shameless plug. We work with providers, across all 50 states, over 100 different specialties, over 60,000 providers nationwide. So we've done a lot of work to identify really the best collection agency. Now, for groups that do partner with Athena, we do allow you to make that decision, of course, really based on your own preference. But there is a preferred vendor that we work with called TSI, and I would actually, recommend you taking a quick look at their website. One of the benefits there's a couple of benefits that we have with that partnership for the providers that work with TSI that also use Athena. One is that they don't get paid a percentage. They get paid a straight dollar amount on those collections. You would actually have to talk to the TSI rep about what that is, but it's, I believe, a single digit, not double digit, on those collections. And then we also have nice electronic cross-functionality that really helps you to push days claims or dollars that are beyond a certain threshold that you want to move into collections. That's an automatic process, and you're able to track that information directly within AthenaNet, just in terms of how successful that company is in collecting those dollars. So shameless plug, we work with that company, but you're not required to do so, but TSI is the name of the company.
Okay, great. It looks like we've answered all the questions that have come through. So
Great.
At this time, we'll go ahead and conclude the webinar. Thank you very much, Ed, for your presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you for the platform.
The slides will be emailed to everybody who participated, as well as a recording of the video will be available on our PRC website in the next week. And thank you very much, everybody who participated today. If you have any additional questions, please give me a call at 619-359-6600, and I can place you in touch with Ed. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your California weather. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.